I don't think you can either. And our I think we're live now, but our boss posted something about screenshots, and that went over almost everybody's head. It was
Yeah, it
crazy.
was. Yeah, it was great.
So we are live, and hey, we are Awesemo with our fearless leader Alex Baker. I almost said I am Adam Ship My Money Share. I am not. I am your old pal Emac.
You don't
Uh,
run that good.
yeah, I no, I don't. But I'm only two sodas in on the day, so we have some catching up to do here. But we have a massive, massive, massive slate. So we're just going to jump right into it. You got a couple double headers. There's still, depending on what your source is for pitching, there's still some questions, and I think it's the first wave of doubleheaders that's just messing people up. This happens every year, but we'll go game by game here. Keep in mind that the two games that were postponed yesterday and are now on today's slate are not going to be counted or even available in the player pool, so that should make it easy for us, depending on what they were doing. So if they had a night game and they, because I haven't looked at, if they had a night game and they pushed in a day game, that day game is not going to be anywhere. If they had a day game already and they've added a second one, that second one's most likely not going to be there unless it's launched in a turbo slate or a express slate or single game contest. So let's just jump on in here. Our two weather games are the first two games that we have. Adam, we have New York Yankees hosting the Kansas City Royals with Heath Fillmyer taking the mound here for the Royals. Masahiro Tanaka on the other side, and then the other weather game. Ooh, did they already? They already postponed it. There we go. So Chicago and Detroit postponed. So
Really, I hadn't seen that.
that
Cool.
must have just happened because they had I'll double check that, but I've seen confirmed lineups, but then they're all in red. So let me
Yeah,
double check that. But kick it off
you're
with
right.
Masahiro Tanaka.
Yeah, my number one pitcher on the slate. I have him projected for slightly less raw points than Berrios, but when you factor in the pricing, he's my number one guy here. Really appealing $9,200 price tag on DraftKings. And this slate's kind of weird. Like there's pitchers that I think are good, but they have, or at least have, upside, but they all have question marks, whether it's their matchup or their price tag or something else. Like in the case of Darvish, we don't really know what he is at this point. Tanaka kind of, to me, is the best of that group when you factor all that in. He has a nice matchup against the Kansas City team that has plenty of strikeouts in their lineup. He's reasonably priced. He has really good swing and miss stuff. Can he give up some home runs? Sure, but there's not a ton of power in the Kansas City lineup. So I'm rolling with Tanaka as, one of my highest owned pitchers today.
Excellent. That I think is about all the analysis we're going to need from that one. On the other side, you have Fillmyer here, who is coming in at a discount, and the lineup that he is going against here is not quite the Yankees lineup of old. The top four, even the top five, are relatively solid if you look at them compared to the rest of Major League Baseball. If you look at them compared to what the Yankees could be putting out, it's not quite there with all the guys that are hurt. Gardner is not in the lineup today, but they're going leading off with DJ LeMahieu, following it up with Judge, Voit, Torres, Frazier. Those guys all have a little bit of power. Giovanni Urshela, more of a glove guy. Romine, backup catcher. Tauschman, I don't know a ton about him still, and I don't know anything about Michael Ford. Is he just one of the endless 4A guys that they have that does well in the minors?
I believe so. I'm pulling his numbers back up now, but I think that's the case. But regardless, like this, it's not a slate where I think we need to really consider getting the Fillmyer. He's not a guy that comes with much strikeout upside. His main purpose would be, if we had like a core slate where we also were trying to get in Red Sox bats or something like that, you just hope that you get a bunch of ground balls from Fillmyer and then he gets you like 12, 13 points and you can move on. But I don't really think we need to get there today. In my initial crunches, I wasn't getting really anywhere close to him. So not going there even with the cheaper price tag on two pitcher sites. I do like the Yankees power. Obviously, like you said, there's less of it in the lineup, but this is a guy who doesn't miss bats. He's basically a fastball slider guy, but the slider so far this season to righties has a 5% swinging strike rate. Since last season, it was at 14.9%, which isn't it's not great for a slider. So, he hasn't given up a lot of power on it, but he just doesn't miss bats overall. And so that plays into the strengths of guys like Aaron Judge, Luke Voit. Clint Frazier actually grades out as a really good play for me because he does have power. He obviously doesn't come with the name value that Judge does. But during his limited time in the majors over the last couple of seasons, he actually has the highest expected WOBA and the highest ISO on the team against right-handed sliders, which Phil Myers thrown about 33% of the time. So Frazier is someone that I actually bumped up a little bit based, from his baseline projection for this matchup against Phil Myers.
All right. That, I think, covers our game here. Let's get on to the next one. This is one that I like a fair amount here. It's so Jake DeGrom went on the the injured list yesterday with elbow soreness. So we weren't sure who was going to be starting in this game, but it looks like it's going to be Chris Flexen. Now he has, I believe the phrase is less than stellar performance background here. So he has been over the last 2 seasons, he's been in the show for his cup of coffee, and he's put up 54 1/3 innings. He has allowed an 8.45 ERA and 13 home runs. Wow, even Dylan Bundy says that's a lot of home runs. Last year, he spent most of the season with AAA Las Vegas. That's in the Pacific Coast League, which is a hitter's league, and of course, Vegas is at altitude, or well, not like Reno altitude, but it is a much better hitting environment. He had an adequate AAA line, but didn't really knock anybody's socks off. This year, he's made 2 starts for the Syracuse Mets. They're in the International League. He went 6 innings in both starts, 18 total strikeouts, 3 walks, 7 runs allowed, and gave up 3 home runs, all the righties. If you look at his minor league stats, there is really nothing eye-popping there. So I am saying that literally the entire Cardinals lineup is in play. As Adam pointed out on the Early Bird podcast last night, everybody is priced to be facing Jake DeGrom. So this is going to be a fun one. Talk to me. What do you got here with the Redbirds and their 5.0 implied run total?
Yeah, I mean, just really clear-cut good plays here. You go from the best pitcher in baseball to Chris Flexen, and they're priced for DeGrom. 3,800 for Matt Carpenter is basically a free square. 4,400 for Goldschmidt is a really, really good price point. Just a really cheap lineup. I mean, the most expensive guy with DraftKings pricing in front of me, the most expensive guy is Ozuna at 4,600. That's still too cheap. But, when you talk about guys like Carpenter and Goldschmidt being even cheaper than that, Jose Martinez at 3,500 has plenty of upside. On Yahoo, you have Carpenter for $16, Goldschmidt for $20, Jose Martinez for $9. Just a lot of power here. And Flexen, not a big sample size in the majors, but since he initially came up in 2017, he's allowed a 394 expected WOBA to righties, a 386 expected WOBA to lefties, some power to both sides, sub 9% swinging strike rates to both sides. He hasn't discriminated. He hasn't been good. This Cardinals team is very good. They're right up there with Minnesota for me as far as my favorite stacks on the slate.
All right. No need to overly belabor this one. On the other side, let's see, we do have the lineup now for the Mets. We didn't when I was doing my earlier research, but we've got Mikolas going against a relatively lefty-heavy squad. Now, he has been better, as expected, against righties. 400 righties since the beginning of last season that he's faced. He has a 235 WOBA and a sub 100 ISO. That's pretty darn good. Against lefties, he's been solid as well. Strikeout numbers are down. He's just at about 15 or 16%. Against the last 500 lefties, he has faced 147 isolated power. So he's a decent pitcher here, but I do like this much improved Mets lineup. I think their top 5 is perfectly fine here with Nimmo, Alonso, Cano, Conforto, and Ramos. These guys are coming in kind of as a secondary stack for me. Currently, of the 8-game DraftKings slate, FanDuel is doing 4, now down to 3 with that postponement. Of the 8 teams or 8 games, they're still just only my 5th stack though. But I do think that going to some Mets here is going to be interesting. Are you leaning towards Mets or are you leaning towards Mikolas here?
I'm leaning towards the Mets, not necessarily as a full stack all that often, although I think it's fine. Like, they are running out about as good a lineup today as they possibly can because they have Brandon Nimmo back in the lineup. They have Wilson Ramos in there, so that takes care of your catcher position. So I'm fine with 5-man stacks. I just have them as, like you said, like my 6th stack on the slate. But for one-offs, you have power in Conforto and Nimmo. Wilson Ramos, one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Peter Alonso has a ton of power. Robinson Cano is incredibly cheap still for really absolutely no reason. And while Mikolas does a pretty good job of limiting damage overall, he doesn't miss bats. And when you're talking about hitters with as much power as the top 5 in this lineup have, and Jeff McNeil's not bad either. JD Davis has power in the 8 spot. It wouldn't be surprising at all if he gives up, at least a couple of like solo home runs, even if he doesn't give up, like a tournament winning, 10 runs or something to the Mets. I think there is at least home run upside for these guys that have a lot of power. So mini stacks and targeting them as one-offs is probably where I'll end up mostly, as opposed to 5-man stacks.
All right.
Conforto, Nimmo stand out the most for me as far as like pitch type data goes from the Mets, and then Cano stands out because of his price point.
That sounds good. Heading on to the last of our 2 o'clock games. Zach Greinke, Yu Darvish. Here we have confirmed lineups. We've got Greinke. Let's see, who is the favorite here? Cubs are favored slightly here. Greinke is looking at 3.9 runs coming at him in the implied total. Darvish is looking at 3.2 coming at him. So not quite the offensive environment here with 2, let's not say top-notch pitchers, but 2 veterans that are much, much, much better than average. We have some wind coming in at about 12 to 15 miles an hour here from left, and we have 51 degrees here at the estimated first pitch temperature. So that's definitely favorable pitching weather here. I'm not even getting one-offs at the moment with either of these squads, Adam, but I'm not really fired up about either pitcher. Let's start with Darvish here and break him down. The walks have been an issue, but you've looked at some of his track record there and some interviews that he's given. Let the fans know what you've discovered.
So, I mean, there are a couple things that at least intrigue me here and give me a little bit of optimism for Darvish. I still am not confident in him being in what he is. Like, he was trending downward before his injuries. Now he's come back. He hasn't really been able to throw strikes. He hasn't been that impressive so far this season, but he did have an uptick in velocity in his last start. He said after that start that he had been kind of just been worrying too much about throwing strikes, which is kind of ironic because he's still doing such a terrible job of it. But he was worrying about it too much and, not just letting it go. And that he, going forward is going to just go out there and throw as hard as he can. So that, at least, I think is good for his upside. He also started throwing his sinker again last start, which is something that for most pitchers I don't like. It's a pitch that is basically meant to get contact and get weak contact, but I hate when my pitchers are trying not to miss bats. But he says he's more comfortable with it. He says that he feels better about it than his four seam. So whatever, if it helps him out and he's throwing harder, I'll take my chances with it. But also, it's worth pointing out that so far this season, the active roster for the Diamondbacks has the 5th highest chase percentage on pitches out of the strike zone. So that's something that could work in Darvish's favor, since his control, he has been struggling with walks. The Diamondbacks will help him out. So I'm going there. I don't feel like if it blows up in my face, I wouldn't be shocked. But, wind blowing in, 3.2 implied run total for Arizona. On my initial crunch, he was my 3rd highest pitcher on DraftKings behind Tanaka and Derek Holland.
All right. Yeah, I've got Tanaka and Holland up there. Of course, we'll talk about Holland, but after we did the Early Bird podcast with you, I looked at it some more and said, you know what? Why don't we trust Adam? He is well ensconced in what he is doing here. On the other side, we have Zach Greinke, who our buddy Josh has made as the poster boy for the slide here on the DFS strategy show. So we'll get Adam's thoughts on him in just a second. But a couple things I wanted to point out here. If you have not yet signed up for Osmo, you can do so. You can get 50% off any 1-month package by using promo code. If you use the one on this screen, it's live before lock, all one word, that'll work. Early bird, all one word, that'll work. Yeah, we have a variety of them. We just like to see where the traffic's coming from, but they all get you 50% off your first month. Additionally, I'm going to drop a link here in chat. If you come in on this link to Yahoo, it does help us out tremendously when you sign up for your Yahoo DFS account. Your first deposit, if you use the promo code Osmo, you will also get up to $30 matched in Yahoo Sports reward points, which are just as good as cash. Adam, let's get back to the good stuff. Fill us in on Greinke.
I don't have like a strong opinion either way on Greinke. I am always scared to roster him just because his stuff is so much worse than it used to be, but he still manages to get by. He's figured out how to pitch with a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, and that's fine. The problem for me is that, for one, there's not a ton of strikeouts in the Cubs lineup. They obviously have a lot of good hitters, and that concerns me. The weather is really nice for Greinke, so it's not that I am thinking the Cubs are going to score a bunch of runs against him. It's just that I don't know how much upside he really has here, how often he gets there, I should say. And he's a little bit more expensive than guys like Tanaka and Yu Darvish, and so that's kind of the problem for me. Like, I'm in my initial crunch, he's coming in tied as like my fifth highest owned pitcher, basically in the same range as Kluber and Berrios, who's more expensive. So yeah, I don't have a problem with him. I just have him behind Darvish. I have him behind Tanaka. Darvish because Darvish is a little bit cheaper. Tanaka because he's cheaper and because I like the spot better.
All right, that I think is reasonable. And then no bats unless they're just creeping in as one-offs, correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. Kyle Schwarber grades out for me as a good play pitch type wise, but again, it's an outfield position that is stacked on this slate, so it's not like I'm getting to a lot of him. It just wouldn't be surprising if he homers.
Were you doing DFS when he came up as the and had catcher eligibility for a little bit?
Probably.
Yeah.
That was like what, 2016?
Yeah, it was like a good 4 seasons ago. So
yeah, I mean, I started playing full time in 2016.
Okay.
I played since like 2014 or 2015, so I was definitely playing.
All right, on to the next one here. We got a little bit of weather in this one. It's San Francisco at Pittsburgh. We've got Adam's favorite pitcher of all time, Derek Holland. I'm looking forward to seeing your Derek Holland tattoo after he wins you a 6-figure prize, because that is going to happen at some point here, Adam. On the other side, you got Jameson Taillon. We say this a fair amount, a better real life pitcher than DFS pitcher, but he is improving as a DFS pitcher because he's getting a few more strikeouts, does a really good job of not getting blown up. I do like the matchup for him. 9,100. He's kind of in the mix there with Tanaka. And then I believe he's probably the reason why I'm not getting as much Greinke and Darvish, because they're all priced very similar here. Derek Holland is, well, why don't we just start off with Holland? We've given enough of a tease, so they want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, Holland's my top SP2 here as long as the weather cooperates. Definitely something to keep an eye on, because the weather is supposed to get worse as the day goes on. And unfortunately, this game's starting at 4 o'clock on the East Coast. So as of last I checked, I am planning on rolling with Holland, but it's something to certainly keep an eye on. Also remember, though, that like, even if there is a good chance of there being an in-game delay, if that is expected to come like 2 or 2.5 hours into the game, you're probably fine to take the starter. Like, he's probably, at worst, you're just missing out on his least effective innings anyway. So don't just immediately write it off if there's going to be weather in the middle of the game. Try and actually get a good estimate of when that's going to happen. But for right now, I'm planning on going with Holland. And the reasoning is just, I prefer him when he's in San Francisco, which obviously isn't the case today, but it's still not a bad park for pitchers in PNC. There's not a ton of power in Pittsburgh's lineup, and he's been really good at getting swings and misses on his slider, which he started throwing more frequently last season. He's thrown it 30% of the time to righties so far this year with a 23.7% swinging strike percentage. He gets hit hard when you put the ball in play. He will give up some power, but again, this park mitigates that, and the lack of overall power in this lineup helps to mitigate that. So I'm fine going there. Like, he's still cheap enough where even if he does give up a few runs and get to like 13 or 14 points, you're fine. But with the swing and miss stuff that he has that 24, 25 point upside that is really tough to come by in the mid-range.
All right. It's going to be an interesting one. If you were going to take any of the Pirates against him, does anybody stand out for you? We don't have a lineup yet, and I don't know that Starling Marte is going to be in. It got dinged up, so I'm doubting he's going to be in there. But is there anybody that you want to consider there for the Pirates?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to answer that. If you go by position, Francisco Cervelli, assuming he's in the lineup at a cheap price tag, is a perfectly fine play. So is Jung Ho Kang, who is just really cheap. My favorite play, as far as ignoring positions and price and everything, just the guy that I think is like most likely to have success, would be Josh Bell. But that's difficult because the position's so deep today. Like, I can't really get to Josh Bell over Paul Goldschmidt or over CJ Cron. So, I am more likely to get someone like Cervelli in my lineup.
All right. I just ran my other crunch, and now I realize why my pitching was a little off from what I thought. We're going to keep going here. For with regards to Tyon, we're also going to talk about Bauer here, who's on the early slate. Ooh,
Late slate.
oh shoot, is it going to be Kluber?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where. Okay, the doubleheaders again. I said, got to be careful with what's going on. So you're going to want to adjust that. That I had unchecked. Okay, thank you. I needed to do that. Talk to me about Tyon while I fix this little crunch here, so I have some better talking points for the other games.
Yes. So I mean, Tyon is again. I think he's a safe pitcher. I don't like the Giants' offense. It's a good park for Tyon. He's been better at home for years, which isn't really surprising. I my final interest level in him will depend on the Giants lineup because his strikeout stuff is much better to righties than it is to lefties. He doesn't get hit hard by either side, but if I'm going to pay, if I'm going to consider paying $9,100 for someone, I don't really want him just getting a bunch of soft hit balls and striking out four guys. So hopefully we can get an extra righty or two in this lineup. But I do like Tyon here. He's someone who I think is a bit better. Like he's made improvements over the last year plus. I think is someone that's better than like my baseline projection for him and probably most people's baseline projections for him if they're going far enough back in, as they should be for most players. But I think Tyon's made some pretty sizable improvements. So I do like him quite a bit here. I could see by like the end by lock, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up getting like more Tyon than Greinke.
All right, that makes sense. So I've got Bauer out of the way here. I got Tuki Toussaint out of the way here. I'm gonna hit another crunch. We're gonna continue forward here. We've got let's see, scroll back up to the top. Our next game is going to be Adam. It's Jose Berrios going against Dan Straley and the Baltimore Orioles. I'm assuming you're not really interested in any of the batters of Birdland today.
No, not really. They're expensive is the thing. Uh, you have guys like Mancini and VR who, if they were cheap, I'd have some interest. But for one, I don't think Berrios will be high enough owned that I really want to go to the Orioles for leverage because he is so much more expensive than that next tier of pitchers. I don't think you're going to get like a 40% owned Berrios or anything like that. And then, I don't want to pay top dollar for Orioles bats.
All right. Rank an expensive Berrios on the road for us here.
Right now I have him behind on DraftKings in my initial crunch. I have him behind Tanaka. I have him behind Holland, Darvish. I'm getting about the same amount as I am Greinke and Kluber. I prefer Berrios at home, but again, I don't have a real reason for why those splits exist over the last 2+ years, and so I don't want to weight it too heavily. It's enough for me to maybe not be like in love with him here, but I still have him projected as the top scoring pitcher on the slate. It's just that you're talking about having to find $1,600 more for Berrios than for Tanaka in a good matchup. So it mostly comes down to price for me. I think that there's a good chance that I'll end up over the field if he does continue to be projected for low ownership like he is right now, because I got him in around 15% of my initial crunches. But then once I decide what lineups I'm playing and start factoring in ownership, he's going to move up the list for me just because he's projected for low ownership. But in terms of the way my lineups come out based on projections, I have him behind all those other guys.
All right, and we have him, let's see, as the 12%. So he is behind Tanaka, Greinke, Kluber, Darvish, who are all in the 30% range. Greinke's 22. We've got Tyon at 14. Mike Fiers at 15, Mikolas at 15, and then Derek Holland at 12. So, again, some of these that was from 2 hours ago. So as the projected lineups turn into actual announced lineups, that will change. The weather will factor into some of this with the game canceled, etc. But just wanted to call that out. But that's one of the best things we have here is our proprietary ownership projections, and they are fantastic. I had my best basketball season ever utilizing them heavily, and I'm really enjoying using them, looking at pitchers as well as where stacks are going to end up. It's something that's very useful to have as a rule of thumb or a benchmark, but that's one of the the fantastic tools that we do have here behind the paywall. Looking at the hitters here for the Twins, they've let's see, still projected lineup. Very solid lineup though, going against Dan Straley. And you know what's great about Dan Straley is behind him is that Baltimore bullpen. Phenomenal for us, not for the Orioles. What do you want to do here with the Twinks?
Yeah, really good spot for Minnesota. They're in my initial crunches. They're my highest owned stack because it is a pretty deep lineup, or at least it's projected to be. You have a nice mix of guys that don't strike out and have some power. Nelson Cruz is right now my highest owned hitter on the slate. Absolutely love him against Straley. Straley is a guy who at times he's been decent, but he's always been a fly ball pitcher. He's benefited from pitching the last couple of years in Miami. Doesn't have that luxury anymore pitching in Camden Yards. And through his first couple of starts, he's not missing bats and he's getting absolutely pounded. 267 expected ISO to righties, 421 to lefties through those first couple of starts. Obviously small sample size, but it's just a really scary spot for him. So I love Cruz. I like CJ Cron. All the lefties at the top, Kepler, Polanco, Rosario are all in good spots. Mitch Garver is my top catcher, assuming he's in the lineup. There's really no way to go wrong here. Even the guys at the bottom have upside with Jonathan Scope, Byron Buxton. They're flawed hitters, but they still have power. So you can. It's kind of like the Astros yesterday. You can get to Minnesota and be contrarian within that stack.
All right. How am I going to get this here? Interesting. Okay. Good question here coming in from Premium from the Showstopper. Wants to know how would we look to differentiate with the heavy popularity coming in on Minnesota, and that's a reasonably good question here. So the way you're going to do that is if you want to play them, that's totally fine. You can do different things like replacing one of the popular bats with someone in an equally similarly good matchup and price point, and just going with a different 4-man stack or even a 3-man stack instead of a 4 or 4 instead of 5. That's one good way of doing it. You can go different with one of your pitchers, and that'll set things apart. The pitching is relatively diffused at the top, so even if you were to somehow end up with the 2 most popular pitchers plus the Minnesota stack, you're still only going to be maybe 10% of the builds are going to come out the same way that you're doing it. So that's not really chalk. So chalk in baseball is entirely different than basketball, and it's something that people just can't get a grasp on when we are running both seasons at the same time, and usually it takes people until we get to the All-Star break to actually figure it out. So I had somebody complaining that so-and-so pitcher was chalk because he was 15 or 20% and he was going off. It's like, yeah, but he was the 8th most popular pitcher on the day. That is not chalk. I'm sorry, it's not. So this is more of just saying there are many ways to build things, and being different, there's so many different ways to do it. That's just one of the main ones. Adam, if you want to throw out another way that you can get different, because in baseball, I mean, good God, even your favorite stack, I mean, what did we have? 50 runs yesterday in Coors Field? Oh wait, no, we didn't. So just different stuff happens, but as long as you're cognizant of it, what are some of the tricks that you like, Adam?
Yeah, so I mean, what you said, like if you're on a low owned pitcher, like today for me with Derek Holland projected at 12% ownership, if I know I'm gonna have Derek Holland in like 2/3 of my lineups, right there, I don't have to worry that much about what I'm doing with my stacks. But also, and I mentioned it when I was talking about Minnesota, and then you mentioned it too. You can use like bottom of the order stacks on teams like Minnesota, where you have power with Scope, you have power with Buxton. Like if you 5-man stack Scope, Buxton, Kepler, Polanco, Cruz, that's a contrarian Minnesota stack. If you take 1 through 6 and you skip, instead of Jorge Polanco at shortstop, you take Javier Baez at the same price point, that's a contrarian Minnesota stack. So it's really just either be different with your pitching and then don't worry about what you're doing with your hitters, or if there's not a pitcher that you want to pivot to, then you're different just by basically not going 1 through 5 or 1 through 2 through 6 or something like that. Just mixing and matching within the team gives you contrarian stacks of a popular team.
All right, and then Sean V, this one's for you. What do you mean the Orioles bullpen is not giving up runs recently on the season? Which, what are we, 12 days into it now? 14 days. The Orioles relievers have 88 innings pitched. They have the second highest ERA at 6.52. they're giving up runs, or they will throughout the season. They don't have a shutdown guy. The other thing that caught me off guard, Adam, was just how bad, and we'll get to it, but just how bad the Milwaukee bullpen has been this year as compared to last year. I saw that they they sent Corbin Burns down to the minors to work some things out. I mean, last year he was phenomenal in his 30 or so appearances out of the bullpen. This year he's given up 11 home runs already. It's absolutely wild. So check stuff out. The other thing you're going to want to know is how recently have they pitched? And just using the Brewers as an example, they had to eat 4 innings each of the last 2 starts from their starters, only going into the 5th. I suspect we're going to see something similar today from Chase Anderson. So they had used 4 guys yesterday for the day before, so they're getting taxed as well. But sorry, I got to go see what's going on with my dog here, Adam. So finish up Minnesota and go on to the next game.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, Minnesota, just get as many bats as you can. Don't be afraid to mix it up, because this isn't a team like you get some teams where the top 6 hitters are in really good spots, and then the bottom of the lineup is just terrible. That's not the case here for Minnesota. So you can mix and match. You can be contrarian. Going on to the game in Oakland, not a whole lot here that's super appealing for me. You have Matt Shoemaker facing Mike Fiers. Oakland is the favorite with a 4.4 implied run total. Toronto with a 3.6 implied run total. I'm getting to Mike Fiers right now as my second SP2 behind Derek Holland, and it's not because of anything really to do with Fiers. It's just that the ballpark is good. The Toronto offense isn't that good. He's relatively cheap, and I have to go somewhere. So there's nothing about Fiers. There's no change in his pitching that makes me think he's going to go out here and strike out a bunch of guys. You're just hoping you get 6 innings out of him and that the fly balls get caught. So I'm getting to some of him, but much less of him than Derek Holland. If you were looking to get to Toronto bats against him, I would want to go first to the right-handed power. So that would be Randall Grichuk. That would be Teoscar Hernandez. Obviously, Justin Smoke has a bunch of power as well. So the middle of that order, you can look to for some one-offs if you wanted to go that route. But getting some Fiers. And then with Shoemaker on the other side, he has more strikeout upside than Fiers does. There are strikeouts in the Oakland lineup, but I'm not getting to Shoemaker. I would actually rather get to the Oakland bats here, because there is so much power, and Shoemaker does struggle with home runs. So far this season, he's been getting hit pretty hard, obviously early in the season, but he's allowed a 343 expected WOBA, 242 expected ISO to right-handed hitters so far this year, 206 expected ISO to lefties. But in this Oakland lineup, you have guys like Chris Davis, Steven Piscotty, Matt Chapman. They all, for me, grade out really well. They have a lot of power from the right side. And then you have guys that you can mix in, for full stacks, like Marcus Semien at a cheap price, or Kendrys Morales, who is basically free. Jurickson Profar is really cheap. So it's just a really high upside spot, and I think people might end up they might end up going a little bit overlooked because of teams like the Yankees and the Twins.
All right, thank you there. Delivery guy came and rang the doorbell, and my wife's not home, so the dog is not going to stop barking until somebody opens the door and shows her that there's nobody there. So there we go. Let's see here. Did you talk about Shoemaker at all there?
Yeah, I'm not getting there. I'd rather have Oakland bats.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let's continue moving along here, because we got a ton of games still to go. Julio Teheran is starting the first game. Corey Kluber is facing him. This is going off the MLB probable pitchers page and 2 other sites. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be good. It looks like Touki Toussaint and Trevor Bauer are going to be in that second game. Teheran is somebody that has been pretty crappy against lefties. The power numbers have gone down a little bit, but all of the other numbers give us a lot of red. So over the last 412 lefties he has faced, he has a 160 ISO. So it's not horrible, but he's got a 17% walk rate. That is god awful, which doesn't help when he has a 42% fly ball rate, because there's runners on base. That causes some issues. So we don't have that lineup yet, but there's a good chance that Francisco Lindor will be back today. He is with the team. They're expecting to activate him at some point during this weekend series, and he did okay in his rehab assignment down in the minors. I think he played a couple games there, but he had a home run or something else. So, yada yada, minor leagues, but at least he should be good to go. Carlos Santana has not played since Wednesday, tweaked a hamstring. Of course, the game was rained out yesterday, so he there was a decent chance he would have played anyway yesterday. But once we get those guys in the lineup, there's two lefties. We have them joined by switch hitter Jose Ramirez and potentially Melky Cabrera. Then you've also got Jason Kipnis, Jake Bauers, Leonis Martin. There's a ton of lefties in this lineup. That is just not set up well at all for Teheran. We've got some pitching weather, though. It's 46 at first pitch here, and we've got a slight breeze blowing in from the outfield, 3 to 5 miles an hour here. Talk to me about the Cleveland batters, because I don't think I want any part of Teheran today.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about all the lefties here as I would have been in previous years, because it looks like Teheran's changed his approach a bit. He's really, really cut back on his two-seamer usage, which is something that I think almost every pitcher in baseball should do. And he's throwing his changeup more to lefties. He's throwing his slider more to lefties. So far this season, he's actually been decent against them. And I would expect him to at least be better than he used to be. I still like Francisco Lindor if he's in the lineup. I like Jose Ramirez. Santana, if he's in the lineup, like they still have good left-handed hitters. It's just that I don't think it's quite as good a spot as it would have been in previous years. Then you factor in the weather, also. So getting to some, Cleveland guys is fine. Like, and if Lindor is out, you would still have Leonis Martin probably leading off, and he'd be a perfectly fine play as well. Teheran also not good at holding runners, so that helps. It's still a good spot for Cleveland. I just am a little bit less excited than I would have been in previous years based on changes for Teheran. I'm not getting to him. I don't think he's 7,200 on DraftKings. I don't think it's the craziest thing to have him. If you prefer him to Mike Fiers, I wouldn't make a strong argument that Fiers is better. To me, it's pretty similar. I'm getting the more Fiers, but I wouldn't talk you off of Teheran. So yeah, not a strong take on Teheran, but and I'd give the edge to like Lindor and Ramirez, but I don't have a ton of interest on either side.
All right. How are you feeling about the Klubot here? I know Laffy doesn't think that there's not sensing anything wrong with him. He was excited to get him yesterday. Of course, there was the rain out. Are you on board with his assessment as well?
I think he's fine. I don't like taking guys against Atlanta. I don't feel super comfortable with it. Not a lot of strikeouts, some good hitters. His slider has been getting hit hard, and the movement does look a bit different than it did last season as far as the, getting less depth on it. But that's not necessarily something that I expect to continue going forward. Like, we're only talking about a couple of starts. So I'm not reading too far into that yet. And I think that's offset by the fact that he's really inexpensive. So he came in at about 15% of my initial crunches. If I get a little bit more than that, I'm fine with it because he's so cheap. But it's not a spot where I'm looking to jam him in because I just respect Atlanta too much.
All right, let me see where I got him on the crunch that I just ran because I was curious. So I'm getting Kluber at 26. The field is at 34, but I was I not getting very much of? I'm not getting as much Berrios as you were. But that'll be something I want to look at after the shows. We construct lineups here. Anything else from this one?
I don't hate Atlanta stacks if Kluber is projected to be popular, just because, it's a talent play. Kluber wins this a lot of the high percentage of the time, but you do get guys like Acuna, Freeman, that are not owned and that serve leverage if they can get to Kluber.
All right, we just got a projected ownership update 9 minutes ago. Kluber is the number 2 pitcher, 31%.
His fastball, the rise on his fastball keeps dropping too, year over year. Down, it's the lowest now that it's ever been in his career, so that's not great to see either. And again, it's not like a huge thing. It's just the stuff doesn't look quite as good as it normally does.
All right, I'm going to get this in there and run another crunch, see what happens. But our next game, that was it for the, quote, main slate, or the main early slate, the 8 games. We're hitting the 2 6 o'clock games because there is slates on both sides for these, and we have some interesting pitching choices here. So the first one is Boston at Tampa Bay. We've got Rick Porcello going against Charlie Morton. The Vegas has the Red Sox with the 4 implied run total, and wait for it, they've got the Rays with the 4.6 implied run total. There's a chance the Rays could win this one. What's going on in the AL East, Adam?
Tampa's good.
He's not the best analyst in the business for nothing, folks. I had to slide that one in there. So we've got Rick Porcello. He's going against a bit of a buzzsaw here. Likely we will see lefties Austin Meadows, Ji-Min Choi, and Brandon Lowe in the lineup. Of course, they've got Tommy Pham, Yandy Diaz, and Avisel Garcia, who are all just fine in righty-righty matchups. I am liking the Rays on offense here in our two-game afternoon slate. Adam, talk a little bit about Porcello's style and pitch mix.
Yeah, I just don't think Porcello is that good of a pitcher. He's like an average guy, but he doesn't miss bats. He has to locate perfectly to have success, and that hasn't been the case so far this year. You have a lot of good power hitters in the Tampa Bay lineup. So yeah, I'm with you. I'd like to get the Tampa bats. It is a 2-game slate, so obviously if you're playing it, you'll have Porcello exposure also, but I'd prefer the Tampa side.
All right. And then with regards to Boston going against Charlie Morton, not the easiest of matchups going against Morton. Of course, Boston is just absolutely loaded. Benintendi, Betts, Moreland, Bogarts, JD Martinez, Devers, Christian Vasquez is like popping home runs every now and then because, hey, they have to pitch to somebody in the lineup, so he's been getting some good pitches to see here. But I'm not really doing a dance to get some of these Red Sox here. What do you think? If you were targeting 2 or 3 of them against Morton, is it going to be Martinez and Betts?
Yeah, it's always those guys. I'd throw Bogarts in there as well.
Okay. The next one here, again, small slates here, but these games are on the all-day slates. Be careful with what you're doing with your pitching on the all-day slates and make sure you understand what the rules are for your site with regards to players in doubleheaders. The Nationals, the Marlins. Sadly, this one is not on the main slate, Adam, because we have Max Scherzer in a phenomenal spot here against the Marlins. Scherzer on DraftKings, 12K. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge here to get him in your lineups. You're probably going to be looking to pair him with Jose Urena. Scherzer against Miami. Is there a better matchup for him with all the righties that we were projected to see here from Miami and just Granderson and Neil Walker as the lefties?
Nope. Miami's, I think, the worst offense in baseball. It's a great pitcher's park. Tons of righties. It's a 2-game slate, so you should be stacking Miami, but it's not going to succeed very often. Yeah, I mean, great spot for Scherzer.
All right. On the other side, Jose Urena, who's reasonable, I guess, and at 5,600, reasonable SP2 on the. If he were on the main slate, he'd be in some conversations here. Again, he's not going to be, but if I was targeting against him, for me, it would be Rendon and Soto are the 2 main guys. Victor Robles, a little expensive, but he does have some nice speed here. Except he's batting 9th, so for me, it's really going to be Rendon and Soto.
Yeah, and I think you really have to get to Urena exposure here because of the other offenses. Like, if you're in your Marlins stacks, obviously you can get. So I mean, and this is why 2-game slates suck. Like, so you're stacking the Marlins against a popular Scherzer. Now you have the money, but you have to roster like Morton and either Porcello or Urena. If you're not rostering Urena, you can't really get to the bats that you want. So, yeah, obviously you're going to just end up with 5,600 Urena and hoping for the best. Juan Soto would be my favorite hitter, followed by Rendon.
All right. Now I was trying to get to see these late slates here because I don't know where is Baltimore and Minnesota on the night slate. Let me see. On DK, they are not. Let's just see if they are on FanDuel. They're not on FanDuel either. So, but just quick thoughts in this one. It would be intriguing to get Martin Perez in this matchup against Baltimore just because their offense is sketch. On the other side here, Alex Cobb, no great shakes. We already mentioned that we really like the Twins against Straley. We're really going to like them here against Cobb as well, but it does not look like I can't find a site that has these guys in there. Any just general thoughts on that one, Adam?
If it's not on a slate, don't play him. But yeah, like I think I wish it was on a slate because I like Martin Perez.
And we're going to run into the same thing here with the Braves and Indians with Touki Toussaint and Trevor Bauer. They're not on the slates either. So let's talk about the 7 o'clock games that are. We've got the Dodgers and the Brewers. This is one that I really like, both from the side of Hyun-Jin Ryu, although I've backed off from where I was on this 5-gamer, but I love targeting against Chase Anderson. Now, Chase Anderson is one of those guys that we say has reverse splits. So this means he's much worse against same-handed pitching, so righties in his case, than he is against lefties. I don't care, because let's look at the lefties here from the Dodgers. So they're all awesome. Peterson, Seager, Bellinger, Muncy, they're all phenomenal hitters. It doesn't mean Anderson's going to shut him down. It just means he fares better himself against lefties than he does righties. The righties are just also amazing hitters for the Dodgers with Pollock and Turner and whomever else. They got Taylor in the lineup. He's fine. So I want to target LA. And here's what we've got for Chase Anderson's, just the numbers. So since the beginning of last season, he's faced 340 righties, allowing a 340 WOBA, 240 ISO, 20% strikeout rate, and an 8.3% walk rate. Against about the same number of lefties, it's a 302 compared to the 340 WOBA. It's a 170 compared to the 240 ISO. Strikeout rates are about the same. Walks are up a little bit. I'm thinking he goes around 5 innings. He's got a bullpen behind him that has already pitched heavily over the last 2 days, and that is not boding well. Plus, as I mentioned, they sent down, though they had put him in the starting lineup, they sent down Burns. So they're a bit of a mess. So if we look at their guys yesterday, Claudio Junior Guerra, Josh Hader, and Donnie Hart all pitched yesterday. The day before it was Albers, Barnes, Jeffries. So they're not out, nobody should really have to go back. It's going to go on back-to-back days, but they've been pitching a lot. And even on Monday, 6 of them went. On Tuesday, 4 of them went. Wednesday, they just put Wilkerson in there to eat the innings. But this is not the same Brewers bullpen that we saw last year, which was just absolutely lights out. So I'm really, really liking the Dodgers on our 5-game slate here. They are my top stack. Talk to me about the Dodgers.
A lot will depend on both sides here on their projected ownership, because with it being a 5-game slate, you only have so many mid-tier options to go to. If the Dodgers are projected for a ton of ownership, I don't mind hoping you get a good start out of Chase Anderson as a leverage play. But if they're not projected to be the highest owned stack, which I really doubt that they will be, then I'll take my chances. Anderson, like you said, he does a better job of limiting power to lefties, but he still doesn't miss bats, and there's so much power in the Dodgers lineup that's really, really dangerous. So I'm assuming that they would come in as a lower owned stack than Houston or possibly like the Phillies or something. Then I like the Dodgers.
All right, I'm just seeing we do have some ownership there for the late slate, and the Dodgers not coming in overly high. So it's looking like obviously Philly and Colorado are going to dominate the day. But then it looks like Houston is coming in as well. So again, that'll evolve, that'll change. But as Adam mentioned, we do want to find some spots where we can gain leverage on the field. And a 5-game slate, while not small, is not really large either when you consider that this is the quote main slate and where most people are going to be getting their action for the day. So that means, wait for it, all the bases will probably be covered. What do you want to do with Ryu here going against a Brew Crew team that is carrying a 4.6 implied run total?
I'm not looking to get to him. I doubt that he goes deep enough into this game in his first start back for me to really want to pay like a 9K price tag for him. It's also a dangerous matchup against Milwaukee. Obviously you can have success. We just saw Julio Urias do that 2 or 3 days ago. But I think that there's just better pitching options. Like I'd rather find the money for Gerrit Cole. I'd rather find the little bit of money for Luis Castillo. You can even make an argument for getting to a discounted Aaron Nola in Coors. So I don't see the need to get to him, but I'm not on the Milwaukee side either.
Well, you know what? Why don't we have you make that argument on getting to Aaron Nola in Coors Field, and we'll catch that 8:05 game in just a second here.
Yeah, it's not like a strong argument. It's just that he's 8,100 and Aaron Nola is better than $8,100. He obviously has struggled this year. It's a huge park downgrade. You have Colorado back essentially at full strength with McMahon and Dahl in the lineup, but it'll also work as a leverage play because on a 5-game slate, Colorado obviously is going to have a lot of ownership. So if you get a good game from Nola, then you're passing a lot of the field. A problem with him outside of the fact that he hasn't been particularly good this season is that his best off-speed pitch is his curveball, which is a pitch that tends to lose effectiveness in the altitude. So there's no like stat or anything on paper that makes me confident in Nola. It's just that when you can leverage on a slate this small where you're going to have concentrated ownership, you can leverage against that ownership with a guy that just has Nola's talent. It's worth considering.
All right. On the other side, Antonio Senzatella, he's coming in at 5,800. That's going to have him in contention there as a potential SP2 along with Eric Lauer. And I think that's a tough one for me. I think I'm going to land on Lauer, but that $1,200 could make some intriguing batter upgrades for you, or be the difference of getting to Gerrit Cole versus somebody else. What do you like or dislike about Senzatella? And then we'll hit on the batters.
I don't like anything about him, but I agree with you that, in some builds, he'll be kind of useful as a guy that, hopefully can just get us ground balls and get through like 5 or 6 innings at a cheap price tag. He's certainly not someone that I'm seeking out or targeting, and I'd rather have Philly bats. But, I'm sure you can get some pretty interesting, Colorado plus Houston or something like that if you're willing to go to Senzatella in some lineups.
All right. Let's see. I guess the hitters, it's going to be Hoskin and Harper as always. You've got Segura and Andrew McCutchen that are a little dinged up. You have to see if they're going to be in the lineup. Maikel Franco carrying a massive price tag, but and batting 8th, but he's been doing pretty darn good this season. Now that he's got a whole bunch of help in the lineup in front of him, hitting on any. Why do I keep saying hitting on? Looking towards the batters here in this game, Adam, starting with the Phillies, Harper, Hoskins, where do you want to branch out from there?
Real Muto obviously is always the best catcher option if you can afford him. He's the best catcher in baseball, so he's priced up, but it's a really good spot. Still waiting, obviously. McCutchen's questionable, Segura questionable, so waiting on the rest of the Philly lineup.
All right, I'm going to load the rest of... we got another update here for projections, so I'm going to get those in here shortly. Let's see. From the Colorado side, anybody? Blackman probably be the main guy you'd look to against Nola.
Dahl, McMahon are both reasonably priced, and Desmond is $3,300 on DraftKings. That's a really easy play. Like, not that he's great or anything, and not that, I have confidence in him against Nola, but that's just way too cheap of a price tag for Ian Desmond and Coors. He's $10 on Yahoo. So that stands out as a top value play.
That, I had missed that one. Although you can kind of see some of these guys getting lost in the outfield shuffle there. Back to our 8:05 game here, because this one has probably the pitcher du jour. With Gerrit Cole going against the Rangers, we have an 80-degree first pitch temperature in Arlington, a little bit of a wind coming in from right field. Gerrit Cole, 10,700, just has been absolutely phenomenal in his time with the Oilers. Good God, with the caffeine's running out. The Oilers don't even exist. We're not talking about Edmonton, but you've got Cole going against a Rangers lineup that, it's pesky. They're missing Rougned Odor. I just don't think they have the stuff to go against Cole. At 10-7, where do you want to be on him with regards to the field? And I'll tell you in just a sec here where the field is.
I want to get as much Cole as I can. I think it's a really good spot. There's a lot of strikeouts in the Texas lineup. There's a lot of left-handed hitters, which used to be a problem for Cole, but since going to Houston and learning things about pitching, it hasn't been a problem. He's been, really good against them since last season. A 236 expected WOBA, 17.7% swinging strike rate to lefties. There's no right-handed power in the lineup. Elvis Andrus can steal on Cole if he gets on base, and he's tough to strike out. So, I like him kind of, but yeah, Cole, I want as much as I can. The flip side to that is obviously Texas does have a lot of power. It is a 5-game slate. Cole, I assume, is the highest owned pitcher. So
he is actually number 3. So we've got Castillo at 43, Cahill at 36, and we'll get to in a minute, and Lauer at 31, and Cole at 31 as well.
That's surprising. I was going to say that I liked Castillo as a pivot, but I guess if he's going to be higher owned, then never mind. So yeah, I mean, you can obviously in tournaments, if you wanted to stack Texas as a leverage play on a 5-game slate, to have the kind of power that can win you a tournament, but Cole would be the priority for me.
All right, looking to the Houston batsmen, they're going against Adrian Sampson, who is not good. I repeat this, Adam. He is not good. Is there any redeeming quality that Adrian Sampson has other than he's not on the Orioles?
Not that I have found. He's one of those guys where I expected him to be really bad, and normally when guys seem as bad as Sampson did, they end up not being that bad because they're like deceptive or something like that you can't really see in stats. But he's been bad since last season. 300 pitches thrown to righties, 253 to lefties, a 440 expected WOBA, a 350 expected ISO to righties, a 328 expected WOBA, and 213 expected ISO to lefties. His average launch angle is basically a line drive. His average launch angle to righties is 14.5 degrees, to lefties is 21.7. So basically to righties it's a line drive, and to lefties it's a home run.
Can we get him in the home run derby as the pitcher
Right.
for everybody?
It's incredible how bad he is, and Houston, not surprisingly, is my favorite stack.
Yeah, there's just going to be literally no way around it. Up and down the lineup, you've got some nice hitters. Here's your pivot to this. If you're using Fantasy Cruncher, they have now got it so you can select which batter slots you want or don't want in your stacks, which is kind of fun. Now, I usually leave it wide open for the most part until I'm going to figure out what this is going to do. But what it makes it a lot easier is if you want to have a wraparound stack or something, you can say, hey, play Houston is my only team I'm picking. Set them at 100%, put them in as a 4-man stack, and then pick 7, 8, 9, 1 or 8, 9, 1, 2, and you can get just those guys. So you can get them sequentially, and that would be an easier way to do it. I haven't really forced it in, saying do I just want to play the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hitters? Because the problem is a lot of times you get a decent value guy or somebody that's hitting 7th that you really wouldn't mind if they make your stack just that much better. So I haven't played around with that feature a ton. But I think if you're not running your wide open 150, but you want to do something specific with 5 or 10 or 20 lineups, I think it's a phenomenal thing to play around with there, Adam. Do you have any thoughts on that feature at all, or you just kind of are fine getting in guys in different spots in the lineup order in general?
In general, yeah, I'm fine just getting in guys because I mean just my process in general, I feel confident that I'm getting the best lineups that I can, so I don't really worry about limiting that all that much. But I agree with you that if you were making like 10 lineups or something, like if you actually have a game plan for a specific lineup, it makes it so that you can execute that instead of being like, I want to stack Houston here, and then you're automatically all of your Houston stacks or your top Houston stacks are going to be 1 through 5 or 2 through 6 or something. You can say like, what's the best way for me to get like a Houston wraparound stack, and it'll give you your top options. So I think that's a really good way to use it for your single entry or 3 max stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think this, and we've got like literally 3 or 4, depending on the site you're on, 2-game slates. This might be kind of fun to do it. So you can say, all right, I'm going to play a 20-person contest or a 20 max contest. I'm going to build 5 lineups like this. I'm going to build 5 lineups like this, and you get your different pivots. So if there's an extreme outcome one way or the other, you're besting the field in those scenarios, and you've got the guys you want concentrated in those lineups. So that would be another application for that tool. I just think it was valuable to take a minute and talk about that. Let's wrap it up here. We've got, we just have 2 games left. So the Reds at San Diego. So 2-game late slate here. So this is one of the small ones. So I did want to call out the Cincinnati Reds righties going against Eric Lauer. Now I think on this 2-game late slate that most gamers are going to be trying to get Mike Trout and some of the righties from the Angels going against Yusei Kikuchi. And that's fine. They're carrying the higher implied run total, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be the best play. So Lauer, who I think is, I've played him a fair amount this year as an SP2, and the Reds just have a 3.6 implied run total, so it's not like he's in a bad spot. But if we want to pick some specific guys against him, against his last 460 righties faced, he's given up a 350 WOBA, 165 ISO, 21% K rate, 9% walk rate. Those aren't horrid numbers at all for hitters with the platoon advantage, but you can get a nice little run there with Eugenio Suarez, Puig, and Kemp. And then on two sides I'm looking at, Kirk Casale's projected to be either 5th or 7th today, but he's another righty, and he's discounted at 3,300 there on DraftKings, and you can get him as your backstop and get rid of that pesky position there. So I just wanted to call those out. Main slate at night, well, not doing cartwheels for the Reds. They're probably going to be, of the 10 teams we have, they'll probably be about my 5th highest stack. And so that means they're coming in as a differentiation stack or kind of a secondary play here. I think Luis Castillo is absolutely phenomenal, as we saw last night with Anthony Desclafani. There is one lefty in the lineup for the Padres, and it's Eric Hosmer. The only other lefty they have coming in off the bench potentially is Greg Garcia, who is a defensive player. He does not carry a big stick at all. Castillo is carrying 43% ownership. I think that's well worth it, Adam. What is your take on this game?
I'll have both sides of this game. So Castillo, I love. He's right up there with Gerrit Cole for me. He's figured out how to get lefties out this year, but that won't even really matter. So, since last season, a 280 expected WOBA and a 15.5% swinging strike rate to righties. There are plenty of strikeouts in this lineup. It's a positive park shift for him. I really like Castillo, not on the Padres bats. But then on the other side, Eric Lauer, I think, is clearly like the chalky, safe, whatever boring word you want to use, SP2 play. He's average. The Reds aren't great, and it's a negative park shift for the Reds bats. So I'll have some Lauer just because it'll, let me fit in bats. But that's not going to be a contrarian view, and Lauer is going to have ownership. So going to these really, really cheap Reds, I haven't tried to build a lineup, but I'm pretty sure you can fit like Cole plus Castillo plus a Red stack. And there is upside in the Red stack when you have Matt Kemp for $3,400 on DraftKings, $7 on Yahoo. Tons of power there. Eugenio Suarez is 3,700 on DraftKings. Like, that might be the top third base play, or it would be if you didn't have Aaron Bregman against
Samson.
Yeah.
So you don't even want to say his name, Adam. That's awesome.
So I mean, Suarez is a phenomenal play. You have power in Puig. Like, Votto is a good hitter. It's the Reds should not be as cheap as they are in this matchup against Lauer.
All right, last game of the night here. We've got Kikuchi and Cahill. The Angels are just not that great against lefties in general. Of course, you do have Mike Trout, who is probably, arguably the best hitter of all time against lefties. But outside of him, it's very, very disappointing. I still think a fair number of people are going to be playing the platoon advantage here, which is fine. We don't have a ton of a track record here with Kikuchi. He has faced just 112 batters thus far in the majors. So, who knows what's going to happen here. But on this, on the full slate, I'm not really excited about the Angels outside of Trout. On the short slate, as I mentioned, kind of do some mixing and matching with your stacks and hope you catch whatever the extreme outlier is of the evening. What do you want to do here with the pitching for the Mariners or the hitting for the Angels?
Mike Trout, obviously. Andrelton Simmons is a cheap shortstop option, is fine. Obviously, I prefer Rockies or Correa over him, but he's still cheap and he'll put the ball in play. He is an average hitter, so he's whatever. I'm not really interested in the Angels, though. Once again, they have almost a 5 implied run total. I don't know why.
And here's another one. They have the 3rd lowest WRC plus this season against lefties at 60. That means in similar situations to the league baseline, they create 40% less runs than average. That is abysmal. Now it's 233 at bats, but that is just abysmal. The only thing they do well is take walks against lefties, and that perhaps is Mike Trout getting them because they're afraid to pitch to him because it's going to be a home run. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a cheap stack, like you look at the Angels with their 4.8 implied run total, you look at the Reds with their 3.6. I would take the Reds every single time.
Yeah.
So, and you probably get them lower owned because of that. So not really any interest in the Angels outside of Trout. I do think Trevor Cahill is a good SP2 option. Okay. It's a riskier match, or it's a risky, I don't even want to say riskier. It's a risky matchup against Seattle, but he just has better strikeout stuff than Eric Lauer does. I Who's projected for higher ownership, Lauer or Cahill?
Cahill slightly. Get that officially. Cahill's at 36, Lauer's at 31 right now, so it's a wash.
Yeah, like I think I would give the edge to Cahill just because of the strikeout upside, and because again I like being able to get to those Reds bats for value.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that is going to do it for us today. Reminder, we do have Jake's going to be popping on here shortly to do the NHL playoff show. I believe I think there's 3 games today for NHL. Those start at 3. You're going to have the NBA, the 4-gamer today. Those start at 3, but there's also a pretty heavy slate for the later games. Since more people will have time to come in from doing yard work and get that stuff ready. And then you're going to have live before lock with myself and Chris Spags. We're going to go at 6 o'clock tonight. We'll break down the 5 games slate that we have here on the main, and we'll know the lineups so we can give some more informed opinions there. You're going to have Adam breaking that down behind the paywall with the deep dive. We, of course, just have all sorts of tools and projections, both for potential production, for popularity, Alex's grades. We've got all sorts of good stuff behind the paywall. Promo code live before lock gets you 50% off any 1-month package. We also have weekly packages, so jump in, check it out. With the weekly package, you do get the access to Slack. And I tell you, once you get in there on Slack, you're going to realize how valuable that is. Had a lot of great feedback from our office hours. Adam's done a few here. I've done some. Sundays are my days. Alex, Awesome himself, has been doing them. So we've got a whole schedule set up for that. Laffy, Josh, everybody's taking turn. And we'll talk about anything that you want. Lineup construction. You want to talk about tournament strategy, bankroll management, selection of contests, ways to find ever elusive edge. I mean, because I've been chatting so much with Jake Hari for hockey, I've actually become pretty good at these playoff showdown slates. And 1, I'm not a huge hockey fan, and 2, I can't stand showdown slates. But last night was my second losing night of the entire NHL season. I play about $50 a day, and I am up $400 since the NHL started. Hey, that would pay for the vast majority of an Osmo subscription there for you for the year. So just saying, there's some ways to get into stuff. No NASCAR this weekend because it is Easter, and today is 420. Had to get one of those in there, Adam. Even though when I was younger, they didn't call it 420. So there you are. But it is April Hemp Day. We're getting out of here. We're signing off. Follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS on Twitter. I am at EMACDFS. And, of course, it is Osmo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.